Good evening and welcome to a special Storm Spider training refresher as part of SKYWARN Recognition Day 2021. My name is Jason Davis. I'm a meteorologist here at the National Weather Service in Birmingham. Again, this won't be a full Storm Spider training class. Just a quick refresher, some basics on just what to report as far as severe weather goes and how to report it. Just as kind of part of our SKYWARN Recognition Day activities where offices all over the country are recognizing all the many SKYWARN storm spotters that we have. This originally started with just being for amateur radio reports, but we've opened it up to all different types of SKYWARN spotters. Just to really appreciate how much we are very thankful for your reports that make it much easier to do our job and really important to help us accomplish our mission of saving life and property. And so this is just kind of our way of saying thank you and also just a good refresher. Again, we'll have more of these classes coming up in around February or so. The first half will be the refresher class. The second half is kind of an open forum. If anyone has any questions they want to ask about storm spotting or wants to share any of their experiences with storm spotting, that part will be a lot more informal. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so why do we need storm spotters? Here at the office, we're looking at radar, storm environment data, satellite data, to get an idea of if we should issue a warning or not for a storm. But what the radar is showing doesn't always confirm what's going on at the ground where people live or how bad it is. And so that's the importance of storm spotters. Being safe, of course, first and foremost, but then providing reports of what's going on, confirming the presence or lack of severe weather. And this information adds credibility to our warnings. For example, if we're issuing warnings on a storm and we're not getting any severe weather reports from spotters from it, that may be a reason for us to cancel the warning or stop issuing warnings on that storm. On the other hand, there are times where what's on the radar does not look that threatening, and we don't have a warning on a storm, but we get a report from a storm spotter and we're able to get that warning out. And while that won't help you where you are because the storm's already hit you, that's a really good way to help your neighbors downstream. That will at least get some heads up that storm is coming, and hopefully some storm spotters upstream of you someday will kind of return the favor and help with that. So again, storm spotting gives us that ground truth we need for storm reports. Our radar has some limitations. There's two main factors. The radar beam spreads out as it gets further from radar. It gets a lot wider. You think of shining a flashlight in a dark forest at night. Real close to you, you'll see pretty well. As you get further out, that beam just gets a lot more diffuse and you can't see things quite as well, just some broad features. Also, due to the effects of the curvature of the Earth, the radar beam gets higher above the ground the further you are from the radar. And that's just a limitation, again, because the Earth is curved, it curves away from the radar where the radar beam keeps going straight. And so our radar beam is showing up here, telling us the storm is capable of producing strong winds, hail, flooding, and a tornado, but we can't always confirm that. Spotters can help us confirm if a storm is actually producing strong winds, wind, hail, flooding, and or tornadoes at the surface, because again, no one lives up in the clouds, everyone lives down at the ground. That's why it's so important to get that ground truth. So again, this being SKYWARN Recognition Day, we just want to, from the bottom of our hearts, express our deepest appreciation for you and your efforts. Just as volunteers that care about your community, it means a lot to us. We really can't thank you enough for just being our eyes and ears on the ground and just being a really important part of our warning team. So just to recap, what do storm spotters report to us? And we'll start off the definition of what is a severe thunderstorm, because there can be some confusion about that sometimes. Some people think it's, how much lightning there is or how much rain there is. But I mean, all thunderstorms produce lightning, severe or not, and they all should be taken seriously. But a storm is considered severe if there is wind gusts of 58 miles per hour, call it 60 or greater, and or hail that's 1 inch or quarter size or more in diameter. If there's a potential of that occurring, or if it's already happening, we issue a severe thunderstorm warning for that. And if a storm has a tornado, of course it's severe, but we issue then a tornado warning instead, keeping in mind that you can still get damaging straight line winds and hail with tornado warning storms as well. Now, most people might think the storm spotters are just going to be reporting lots of tornadoes and wall clouds, but the most common thing you report to us is probably wind damage. That's our most common type of report we get around here. First off, it's pretty hard to see tornadoes in this part of the country. We got a lot of hills and trees, a lot of storms happening at night, and a lot of tornadoes that are rain wrapped. Most often, that just creates a very dangerous conditions where it's hard to storm spot in real time. But after the storm has passed, right away, if you see any damage, that is very important to us, either to confirm straight line wind damage, or it helps tell us that a tornado may have gone through. Now, it can be really hard to actually estimate wind speed just kind of looking outside. We all get pretty excited during storms, and we can often tend to overestimate the wind speed. So it's better to see, okay, what kind of effect is the wind actually happening? Yeah, it sounds pretty bad, it's howling, but what's actually happening? And that's why it's important to report to us the damage you have. Now, if we do report a speed, you want to let us know is that that's estimated by you or measured by some actual weather equipment. Now, sometimes, a lot of times, we'll ask if there's any damage from a storm. People will say, oh, no damage, but tons of trees down. But trees count. We want to hear about all downed trees in our area. And that's our clear damage indicator in this pretty forested area of the country when severe storms have come through. But we need some more info because storms that aren't severe, that have winds below severe limits, can knock down trees too in some cases. To help us kind of determine if this is a severe wind report or just kind of a non-severe wind report, we need to know, is there just one tree? Is there multiple trees down? Is it just large limbs or whole trees? Were the trees kind of uprooted because the ground was pretty saturated, or were the trunks actually snapped off? Also, big thing is, was this tree a very healthy tree, a live tree, or is it a dead tree? If it's a dead tree, you see it's kind of rotting out inside. There might be bees nest in there or something. That tells us, okay, that wouldn't take much wind to blow down a dead tree. Other things to report are things like down power poles, and of course damage to any buildings. Are there any shingles torn off, gutter damage, that kind of thing. Also, a very common thing to report to us, especially in the springtime months, is hail. We ask that you report the size of the largest stone you see. That's what's going to do the most damage. The key thing with this is when you tell us the size of the hailstone is you need to use a common object to help us know exactly what size it is. We ask that people don't report marble-sized hail because marbles can be different sizes. Now, of course, if you have a ruler available, that's the most accurate way to measure it. Remember, 1-inch diameter is severe. But you can also use common items like coins, thinking like dime-sized hail, nickel-sized hail, penny-sized hail. Quarter size is severe, and $50. Now, if we start getting the bigger hailstones, they get to be larger than coins. And so we move into sporting equipment, things like golf balls, tennis balls, baseball, etc. Also, we want to know if the hail caused any damage. And often great, give us a picture. Take a picture of the hail next to that tennis ball, and that helps us really tell how big it was. Flooding, often overlooked. That's a very important thing to report. This year has really shown us the power of flooding and the danger of it. Unfortunately, we have had some flood fatalities this year. Now, the key thing with this kind of flooding is we want to know things like, is that water standing or is it flowing? Some areas that are kind of low, you get kind of some large puddles, standing water that fills up. If it gets too deep, of course, that's still dangerous. But if that water is flowing, then that becomes even more of a concern because that flowing water can quickly push vehicles away or sweep you off your feet. And so the key things to help us to know if this is regular flooding or flash flooding are things like, again, is that water still or is it flowing? How deep is it? Flash flood is kind of defined as 6 inches or more of flowing water, or 3 feet or more of standing water. Key thing here is, is this flooding life-threatening or not? Could someone potentially drown in this? And other things to keep in mind, is this an area that floods every single time it rains, or is this flooding that you've never seen like this before? What kind of damage is happening? Where is the flooding happening? And of course, you want to report to us wall clouds, funnel clouds, and tornadoes. Now, it can be kind of tricky to determine what these are, so we'll quickly kind of go over some definitions of these clouds right now. All right, so wall clouds, we're looking underneath a thunderstorm and for a kind of a localized, attached, persistent, and blocky lowering from the storm's updraft base. Now, in the main classes, we go into some details about updrafts and downdrafts. We won't get back into that here, but often you might see an area where there's less rain or no rain, and there's kind of a lowering of the cloud base. Again, it has to be attached. It's not one of those low-hanging clouds or low scud clouds that are unattached. Typically find these underneath the updraft again, with the darker rain downdraft area falling downstream. Not all wall clouds rotate, but of course if the wall cloud is rotating, it's more concerning, but it does not guarantee a tornado, but we definitely want to know if it's rotating. Again, though, not all storms are going to have a clearly well-defined wall cloud. Now here's some other pictures of some clouds that look pretty ominous. One of these was last summer, taken to the Vestavia Hills Country Club. These look, pretty bad. Probably reported these to the weather service right away, except these are actually all just harmless scud clouds. Scud clouds are typically unattached. Sometimes they can be attached to the cloud. Key thing is they're usually pretty ragged looking, pretty jagged looking. These things are rotating. Either they'd be much smoother or it'd be very obvious, clear and obvious that there was a tornado. It's not just this kind of still cloud hanging there. These happen just because of the interaction of rain-cooled air and surrounding warm air within the humid level of air mass. Again, they don't rotate, so they're not funnel clouds, not tornadoes, and they're harmless. Again, pretty tricky. It'd be really hard to tell just from a still image, especially if these are tornadoes. And so it really takes some extra study. Again, send us some pictures and videos that can really help us. Now, shelf clouds often are misreported to us as wall clouds, and so it's really important to know the difference between a wall cloud and a shelf cloud. Shelf clouds form on the leading edge of the gust front, with rain-cooled air rushing ahead of the thunderstorm line. These are much wider than they are tall. Often they cover the whole entire sky, whereas wall clouds are much more localized. They slope away from the rain area. Now, this can be a sign of some strong winds coming in, potentially damaging depending on the situation. So you want to keep in mind that. Also, you may see some turbulent eddies underneath these, but vast majority of time, this is not anything tornadic. So again, with these, you're thinking wind, not tornado. So again, recapping wall clouds and shelf clouds. Wall clouds are associated with the updraft. Shelf clouds are associated with the downdraft. Wall clouds are associated with funnel clouds and tornadoes and are favored areas for rotation. Wall clouds are low blocky clouds, while shelf clouds are low elongated clouds. Next up are funnel clouds. Key definition of a funnel cloud is it has to be rotating to be a funnel cloud, no matter how low hanging it is. It's rotating funnel-shaped cloud, usually kind of cone-shaped, typically very smooth. It's not ragged or jagged like the scud clouds are. Has to be attached all the way to the cloud base. Typically laminar or smooth in appearance. Funnel clouds do not reach the ground, otherwise they would be tornadoes. Of course, we'll talk about a little bit later, though, is that even in tornadoes, the visible funnel may not extend all the way to the ground. Finally, tornadoes are a violently rotating vertical column of air extending from the base of a thunderstorm to the ground. It does get tricky because the condensation cloud, the part of the tornado or the funnel you can see, may not extend all the way to the ground. The key thing is to look for any kind of debris, dust, dirt, limbs that are being picked up along the ground. That indicates it's on the ground. Remember, tornadoes are ultimately wind, which is invisible. All we're seeing is the effects of the wind. And this cloud that comes down is just caused by the low pressure that changes at what point the air gets saturated. Just kind of recapping, how do you report severe weather to us? you can call our office. That's the quickest way to do it, especially for an urgent report, ongoing tornado or wind damage, flooding. Call us at 205-664-3010, option 2. Another very quick way to report to us is via Twitter, at NWS Birmingham. You can also use some of the hashtags ALWX and hashtag BMXWX. Those are an option for you. You can also send us a message on Facebook, U.S. National Weather Service, Birmingham, Alabama. Spotter network apps out there. If you are into amateur radio, we have our alert group of amateur radio operators that would love to have you join them. And that's a great way to report severe weather to us. That's where all this Recognition Day kind of started with. And key thing with that, of course, is that, if the internet is down, the power's out, you still may have amateur radio. Now, for more less urgent reports, not ongoing storms, but, I noticed some damage the next day, or I want to send some more pictures, you can go to our website, weather.gov/BMX, click our Submit a Storm Report page, or you can email us at sr-bmx.dss@noaa.gov. Now, as part of SKYWARN National Recognition Day, we're doing something called a National Spotter Check-In. This kind of goes off our amateur radio operators during this day are out trying to make contact with as many people across the country as possible with radio. And so we're kind of thinking in a more virtual way, how can other spotters that aren't amateur radio operators be part of this too? And so we came up with a web page, weather.gov/CRH/SKYWARN Recognition. If you are a trained spotter, we would love you to go to that web page, put your name on a form, then and where you are at. And so we can eventually end up with a map of where all our spotters are across the country, just show how strong the spotter network is. So the key thing here is go to weather.gov/CRH/SKYWARN Recognition. Fill out the short form on there using first name and last initial. Now at our office, we don't do spotter ID numbers. You can leave that blank and then go type in your address or zip code and put your location on there and submit.